Boston Nun Chrysovalantou Miro, in an interview with the National Herald, has charged that Metropolitan Paisios of Tiana caught up in a swirling scandal involving allegations of sexual conduct in Astoria, New York. Monastery he ran, sexually abused her daughter. With tears in her eyes and her voice trembling, she said, "I never thought that Paisios would come to this point to hurt my child," and added that, "I talked to her now that all these things became public, and she did not deny anything. She did not say, 'Mama, all these are lies.'" TNH called Metropolitan Paisios in his home in Athens to provide him the opportunity to comment on the interview, but he hung up when he heard who was calling. Patriarch Bartholomew has also refused a request from the TNH to grant an interview on the Paisios issue, which concerns the Greek-American community and belongs directly under his jurisdiction. Bartholomew declined the request for an interview through his chief secretary by saying it will not be honored. For almost 10 years, Nun Chrysovalantou has found refuge in the Cathedral of St. Marcella of GOH, genuine Orthodox Christians, in Astoria under Metropolitan Pavlos Strategias. She said that Metropolitan Paisios expelled her from the St. Irene Chrysovalantou monastery he ran because, as she said, "I was telling him that it was not right for girls to go into his room." She and her then 9-year-old daughter, whose name is being kept confidential, lived in the monastery. When Sister Chrysovalantou became a nun, she was 45 years old and had separated from her husband because of the old calendar issue. She said, "The early days, it was all good. I trusted my child in the hands of Paisios. He had told me that he would be her protector and lead her close to Christ." At some point during the interview, Sister Chrysovalantou took a deep breath and said, "It never went to my mind that all those things that were said about other children, that also my daughter was among them. She had not said anything to me. Now, of course, that all these became known, my daughter was in also. She broke up with her fiancé and she completely changed behavior. After school, she was going straight to the monastery. One day I was cooking. She came to the monastery from school and she disappeared for some time. I became concerned and I went over the 3rd floor, knocking the doors because I knew she was in, but nobody opened the door. A priest named Far Kalinikos saw her coming down from the 3rd floor. When I saw her, I asked her, 'Where have you been? What did you do?' She said I was upstairs with the Metropolitan. When I told her that I was knocking on the door, she told me that we did not hear. Late-night visits. Nun Chrysovalantou also said that when the girl grew up and became 16 years old, she became engaged with a young man in 1996. He was a Greek boy who lived opposite the church. After the engagement party, which was held in a function room in Astoria, he, Paisios, took her and her fiancé to the monastery. It was 12 o'clock midnight, and I wondered and said to myself, why not wait until the next day to speak to them about anything he wanted to tell them? When they returned at 2 o'clock in the morning, I asked them, "What did you do for so long?" And they told me as we danced and became sweaty. He, Paisios, told us to bathe. The engagement did not last long. My daughter had changed too. They split with her fiancé and she used to come home 2 o'clock after midnight, said her mother. She added that he, Paisios, took my daughter to Jerusalem and Greece, and I did not like it, and I told him. He asked me, "Don't you trust me?" I replied to him, "Unfortunately, I do not." Then he said, "You are crazy." When asked, "Are you convinced that Paisios abused your daughter?" she replied, "Unfortunately, I am." And she added, "She spoke to the Exarchy, patriarchal commission that came to New York to investigate. They came here. Her husband spoke too. I understand that she said everything." Sister Chrysovalantou also said that, "I saw a girl, I will not mention names, who came every day and went over to him, and that bothered me. I always used to say to him, Paisios, that it is not allowed for a girl to come over to your room. I told him that this bothers me, it scandalizes me. He told me that I've known her since she was little." The nun Chrysovalantou added that some boys climbed to the 3rd floor, but I do not remember who they were. And she added that Paisios had brought some other small Russian children, John and Anastasia, but they left. Perhaps their mother suspected something. They were small, 9 and 11 years old, and he dressed them as monk and nun. When asked, "Did Paisios ever bother you personally?" she said, "No, because I did not give him any reason for something like that." Speaking about former nun Christonymphy Fitzpatrick, who left the monastery on November 6, 2010 and reported to police in Astoria and gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, she said she found in the monastery, Sister Chrysovalantou said that Christonymphy lived on the 3rd floor, and I was surprised and I used to say, "Why do all the rest of us live on the 2nd floor?" Sister Chrysovalantou also said that I was observing the behavior of Christonymphy and she was very attached to him. I told Paisios that it is not right for a girl like Christonymphy to be so closely connected with you, to come to your room. He told me, "Well, she is young and we must support her." Sister Chrysovalantou added that Paisios sometimes told her, "You're crazy, you have been demonized, you do not know what you are saying." Sister Chrysovalantou also said that we had gone to Jerusalem and Sister Christonymphy and I stayed in the same room at the hotel. She went to his, Paisios' room. When she came back to the room, I asked her, "Where have you been?" And she told me, in the bishop's room. Sister Chrysovalentou also said that, in the beginning, Christonymphy's brother, Nectarios, had come to the monastery and he was dressing as a monk, but he left. She added that up to 7 to 8 children, boys and girls, went to the monastery, and she said, "I said that to the exarchy, and its members became upset," what the bishop said. Her accusations came not long after Bishop Vicentios, who was also at the monastery and has known Paisios for 40 years, made similar charges of sexual misconduct against him. Sister Chrysovalentou said, "Bishop Vicentios was my father confessor. I was telling him my observations and that I was scandalized about Paisios, and Vicentios was telling me I will talk to him, and he did. One day I was down in the kitchen. Paisios called me and told me, 'Collect your belongings and leave the monastery immediately.' She also said that many times both of them, Paisios and Vicentios, quarreled, but I did not know why. From what I hear now, it was because Vicentios was telling Paisios that the things said about him were disturbing. Speaking about Father Iakovos Fitzpatrick, father of nun Christonymphy, she said that he was not a sly person. When asked how he allowed his daughter to go to the monastery at church from a young age, she said, 'I do not know. Paisios made her a nun at the age of 14 years old.' She also said that Paisios made my child to hate me. One morning she left and went to her father in Greece when she was 19 years old. She was going to college. When asked, 'What do you feel about Paisios?' she replied, 'Sadness, not hatred, and I pray that the Lord gives him repentance.' She also stressed that the patriarchate should defrock him, and she added, 'I do not know about Paisios.' To the question, 'Do you now have any doubt that your child was molested?' Sister Chrysovalentou replied, 'Unfortunately, I do not.' To the question, 'Are you confident in your soul that Paisios did those things he has been accused of?' she replied, 'Unfortunately.' Asked if her daughter would give testimony to the police, she said, 'I asked her if she will go and testify to the police, and she told me that if the police asks me, I will go.' She said that her daughter will tell the police everything she told the patriarchal exarchy. She spoke very highly about her son-in-law, saying, 'He rescued my child from hell. I am grateful to him.' Sister Chrysovalentou came to America from Pyrgos in Ilia, Greece in 1977. Her husband was in the United States. He went to Greece, and they met, married, and came back to America. She said, 'We lived in New Jersey for 9 years. I turned the radio on a Saturday's program of Santorino, and I heard the broadcast of the Holy Irene Monastery. I did not know about the old calendar. I was thrilled by the speeches and sermons, and one day I called to solve my queries regarding the difference between the old and new calendar. They explained to me, they sent me books to read about the holy canons of the church. I was convinced that the old calendar is correct, and I followed them.' She revealed that the reason for divorcing my husband was the old calendar. We were fighting with my husband, who does not like to follow the old calendar, and eventually we divorced. She said her husband tried to save their marriage, but she was adamant in her beliefs. My husband took me to Greece to pull me away, but I had contact with them, Paisios and Vincent. Paisios told me, 'Since you do not agree with your husband, divorce him and we will help you to come back to the US. I did not take into account anything. My brothers and my mother spoke to me and told me to think logically. They said to me, 'Do not destroy your marriage just for the sake of the old calendar,' but unfortunately I did not listen to anyone." She was quick thought to add that, "I did not regret that I became a nun." She said when she and her daughter came to the monastery in Astoria that, "In the beginning I was given a lot of responsibilities. To cook, to shop, to clean. I was running everywhere, and somehow I had neglected my child, but I trusted that she was in good hands." Met. Paisios' accuser tells TNH his story. Athens. In an exclusive interview with TNH, Spyros Malamatenios revealed new evidence against Metropolitan Paisios of Tiana, former abbot of the Patriarchal Monastery of Saint Irene, Chrysovalentou in Astoria, including that he was also sexually abused by him at age 17. Malamatenios is the brother of Bishop Vicentios of Apameia, the monastery's former deputy abbot and Paisios' co-worker for more than 40 years. TNH called Paisios twice in Athens, where he has resided since October 2010, having reached him on both his residence and the cellular numbers, but he hung up the phone both times. Malamatenios, who has just turned 50, said that he challenges Paisios to a polygraph test and to try to dispute the charges in court. In his interview to TNH in December 2010, Vicentios had made the astonishing revelation that Paisios had sexually abused Malamatenios. He had stated that, while in exile in Greece for a month, "I found out even my brother, Spyros Malamatenios, was one of Paisios' victims. He revealed to me everything that had happened to him since he came to America at 17. Unfortunately, very bad experiences of sexual harassment by the abbot is why he had left after the death of my mother. He had disappeared, and I did not know where he had gone. When I went to Greece, he told me that he was in Florida and did not want to see and hear anything about the church and the clergy, nothing whatsoever." Malamatenios told TNH about shocking acts of lewdness in which clergy who now belonged to the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, as well as from the Church of Greece, had participated. Malamatenios' tragic misadventure began in 1979 when his father died in Greece, and he and his mother moved to the United States to be close to Vicentios, who at the time was an archimandrite with the old Calendarist Church. We lived at 36th Street and 23rd Avenue in Astoria, where the offices are today. I was not close to the church, but my brother Vicentios was very strict with me, and he wanted me to go to confession to Paisios. He wanted him to be my spiritual father. I had never gone to confession before in my life. Little by little, Paisios approached me during the confession session and said that he wanted to be friends. We sat on the couch and he was drawing near me. Vicentios would go to bed upstairs and I was sitting downstairs in the living room watching TV. Paisios was telling me this is not wrong, that it is not unethical. He was persuasive in brainwashing to sway you to his ways. Malamatenios, who had been working in the fur business at the time, said that the first sexual attack from Paisios was in the spring of 1979. I resisted strongly in the beginning and I pushed him back. But gradually he gave in. The sexual activities were taking place in the living room, Malamatenios explained, because his brother slept upstairs and his mother across the hall. Paisios pressed me to comply and threatened me not to say anything to my brother. Malamatenios said that other children younger than him were aware of what had happened, but they did no talk because they knew I was Vicentios' brother. Malamatenios added that a priest currently serving in the archdiocese would bring young men around in their early to mid-20s to Paisios, who would pay them to engage in sexual activities. He said that both Paisios and the other clergymen enjoyed watching. Paisios would also encourage him and other boys to have sex with 11 or 12-year-old girls, Malamatenios said. Though Malamatenios declined that prompting, other boys did not. Malamatenios also recalled when an archimandrite friend of Paisios had come to New York from Piraeus, and Paisios sent him, the other priest, Malamatenios, and other boys to see a movie involving homosexual acts. At some point, Malamatenios had left New York. I had gone to Florida to work because Paisios had become very pressing. I had left the monastery other times as well, but Paisios made every effort to find me. He was in love with me. In 1997, Malamatenios returned to Greece permanently, and for some years there was no communication between Paisios and him. Then, Paisios found in Vicentios' telephone book the telephone number of our aunt with whom we lived in the same apartment complex. He called and he invited me to go see him in Voula because Vicentios had sent some gifts for our relatives. I went to the apartment and Paisios made advances towards me. We became involved, and Paisios saw that I did not have a permanent job, and he paid me $200 to $300 each time that we engaged in activities. Malamatenios added that the former nun, Christonymphy Fitzpatrick, used to come to Athens and stay with Paisios at the apartment in Voula. I knew her since she was a little girl. Malamatenios said that my life has been traumatized, and that is why I couldn't establish a family. My life was taken by Paisios. I did not expect these things to happen to me. I had lost my father. Paisios in the beginning was behaving in a friendly manner. He was telling me that we are friends, and you can ask me anything you want. But finally, everything turned upside down. Malamatenios explained that as a minor he was impressionable and fell for Paisios' advances, but the relationship that lasted until 1.5 years ago was motivated by money, the $200 or $300 that Paisios would pay him each time. He added that he became an atheist because of the things that I have seen with Paisios and other clergy from everywhere, from Athens too. I know too much. Boston, the National Herald, has learned that Sister Christonymphy Fitzpatrick, a nun at the St. Irene Chrysovalantou Patriarchal and Stavropygial Monastery in Astoria, New York, has left the monastic life and given a statement to the 114th Police Precinct on Saturday night, November 6, 2010, where she revealed a great deal about the events that transpired in the monastery under the leadership of its abbot Metropolitan Paisios of Tyana throughout the years she spent there. TNH sources report that she gave a detailed account of licentious acts that included members of both sexes, some of whom were underage at the time that the events transpired. Sister Christonymphy also handed over to the authorities a briefcase containing approximately $500,000 in cash. At present, the 26-year-old nun has been taken to an unknown location to ensure her safety and protection, following police directives. TNH spoke with Metropolitan Paisios, who declined to make any comment regarding Sister Christonymphy's statement to the police. He clarified that the money given by Sister Christonymphy to the authorities is for the 3rd floor we wanted to build. He also stated that the approximate amount of money in the briefcase should be around $285,000, something like that. When asked why the funds were being held in cash, Metropolitan Paisios said, "Because we did not want them to be used." Metropolitan Paisios also added that he knew nothing about Sister Christonymphy's statement to the police. Sister Christonymphy spoke to authorities for over 7 hours from Sato Nov. 6, 2010 at 6:30 p.m. until about 2 a.m. the next morning. TNH file photo. Sister Christonymphe, 26, born Catherine Fitzpatrick. Sister Christonymphe, born Catherine Fitzpatrick, joined the St. Irene Chrysovalantou Monastery at age 14 and was tonsured a nun 2 years later by Metropolitan Paisios when she was renamed Christonymphe. She is the second of 12 children born to Reverend Jacob Fitzpatrick, who is a celebrant at the St. Irene Chrysovalantou Monastery in Astoria and at its dependencies on occasion. Bishop Vicentios, the deputy abbot of the monastery, declined to speak to TNH, saying, "The issue relates to the abbot. I have no comment." The Queens County District Attorney's Office declined to comment on the investigation, explaining that it is unlawful to give out information prior to the issuance of an arrest warrant, and that information can be given only after charges are brought before a defendant in court. The Queen's DA's office also noted that the case will be handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office because the FBI and other federal agencies are involved in the investigations. Reverend Fitzpatrick went to the police station upon learning that his daughter was giving a statement to authorities and waited for her until 2 a.m. to offer her moral and parental support. Sister Christonymphe holds a master's degree in education and was the director of the St. Irene Chrysovalantou kindergarten program. According to TNH's sources, Sister Christonymphe had spent the past 3 or 4 days at the home of friends in New Jersey until she finally relented and decided to go to the police on Saturday to give a statement. Sister Christonymphe, who said she feared for her life, was taken to a secure location and will give a statement to the patriarchal delegation that is expected to arrive in New York on November 8th to investigate the issue on behalf of the church. Bishop Vicentios levels shocking charges against Metropolitan Paisios, December 24, 2010. New York, the National Herald. Bishop Vicentios of Apamea has made stunning allegations about Metropolitan Paisios of Tiana tenure at the St. Irene Chrysovalantou Monastery and its dependencies in Astoria, New York, including charges that the Metropolitan sexually abused the bishop's brother, Spiros Malamatenios, who was 17 at the time. In a long interview with the National Herald, Bishop Vicentios Malamatenios, a close associate of Metropolitan Paisios Loulorgas for 40 years and co-founder of the monastery, outlined a sordid tale of sex and other alleged wrongdoings. In the lengthy interview, which was taken on tape live and unconditionally at the headquarters of TNH in New York, Bishop Vicentios made revelations of alleged serious excesses by the Metropolitan, including that he was involved with people of both sexes, including the young nun, Christonymphe, who now has given up the monastic vows and talked to the police. Bishop Vicentios also revealed that, according to his information, the former nun had been pregnant but did not know by whom. Simultaneously, Bishop Vicentios asked forgiveness from the victims of Paisios, at least one of whom, Andreas Giorgio, is already launching a lawsuit against the monastery and the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Other alleged victims are expected to follow. The Metropolitan left the monastery after submitting 2 letters of resignation in October, citing health reasons, and returned to Athens, Greece. TNH called him at his residence there on Decameter 11 to give him the opportunity to comment on the allegations and the bishop's entire interview, but when the Metropolitan heard who the call was from, he hung up the phone. Bishop Vicentios confirmed reports that a gun was found by the Patriarchal Exarchy in the room of Metropolitan Paisios, and that he also sold the golden offerings known as tamata of the faithful at the monastery's Greek festival, also taking much of the gold to Greece, which was melted and made hierarchical crosses and pictorials. Bishop Vicentios alleged that even his own life is at risk. He stated that based on the charter granted by the Ecumenical Patriarchate to the Chrysovalantou Monastery, and also according to New York State's regulations governing the legal corporation of the Chrysovalantou Monastery, both interim abbots appointed by the Ecumenical Patriarchate, Metropolitan Evangelus of New Jersey, and Bishop Elias of Philomelion are considered illegal. Vicentios said he believes that the monastery will be driven into bankruptcy due to economic decline, and called Metropolitan Evangelos' behavior toward him as completely unbecoming upon Evangelos' coming to his residence at the Church of St. Nectarios in Brooklyn on December 6, which he said could result in the arrest of Metropolitan Evangelos by the police. Bishop Vicentios also said that the money delivered by the former nun, Christonymphe, to the Astoria police station, he believes belongs to the monastery and not Paisios. He also talked about the role of a man identified as Konstantinos B., said to have uncovered the scandal, and who allegedly also participated in group sex events with Metropolitan Paisios. The man was said to have given that testimony to the police and the FBI. Here are some excerpts of the extensive revelatory interview of Bishop Vicentios, which will be published in its entirety in Greek in the weekly magazine of the National Herald's edition. F. 17. 18. Nun spurs $260,000. Mystery by Larry Colonna. Published November 16, 2010. 5 a.m. et. A nun at a Greek Orthodox church in Queens turned over to the NYPD $260,000 in cash and 100 gold coins mysteriously left behind by the head of the congregation shortly after he left the country, the Post has learned. Metropolitan Paisios Loulorgas, the abbot of St. Irene's Church and Monastery in Astoria for more than 30 years, was summoned to Greece earlier this month to meet with Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, the head of the Orthodox Church according to parishioners. When Lulorgus left, he told nuns to safeguard a bag but didn't say what was inside, sources said. Sister Christonymphi. Fitzpatrick eventually opened it up, discovered the dough and panicked, the sources said. On Novi 6, she brought the stash to the 114th Precinct station house. Cops vouchered the money and still have it. The sources said no criminality is suspected. But the Orthodox Church is holding its own probe, according to the National Herald, a paper for Greek Americans. The Herald reported that a 3-person delegation from Istanbul had arrived in Astoria to investigate the situation, and that Lulorgas was meeting with top church officials in Greece. The delegation ordered that the chambers of Lulorgas, Fitzpatrick, and Deputy Abbot Bishop Vicentios be sealed, the paper said. The report added that Lulorgas has now left St. Irene's, citing health issues. A female employee at the church would say only that Lulorgas had left to talk to the Patriarch. A parishioner who has been going to the church for about 30 years said yesterday that Lulorgas is very honest. He's extremely intelligent. It's like listening to God, said the man who declined to give his name. When asked about the cash, the parishioner said, it's to build the monastery, that's what we believe. Neither he nor the employee had been told that Lulorgas had resigned. The Greek Orthodox Archdiocese did not respond to an email requesting comment. Additional reporting by Dan Mangan. Patriarch Bartholomew gets letter of complaint on Paisio's conduct, January 15, 2011 by G. Shippey, Boston. A letter charging that the former abbot of the Chrysovalantou Monastery in Astoria, New York, Metropolitan Paisios of Tyana, had sexually abused their client was sent to Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew and to the members of the Holy Synod by the Zalkin law firm in New York, which also said church officials did nothing to prevent alleged sexual misconduct or help the victims. This letter is written on behalf of Andrew G., survivor of repeated acts of sexual abuse inflicted your brother and servant, Metropolitan Paisios Lulorgas, stated attorney Erwin M. Zalkin in his letter dated January 10, 2011. It also added that Andrew has already shared the details of the abuse in a letter to Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I. Andrew also met with the Patriarchal Exarchy team, headed by Metropolitan Nikitas, that was sent to New York to investigate allegations against Metropolitan Paisios. Patriarch Bartholomew faces a dilemma in the growing scandal surrounding the Chrysovalantou Monastery in Astoria, New York, where charges of sexual abuse have led to a possible civil claim of damages against the church. The letter further alleges that Andrew had been traumatized by the alleged abuse, the lawyer said, had been committed by Paisios, who has repeatedly refused to take calls from the National Herald on the burgeoning scandal nor make any comments. The Patriarchate has similarly refused to talk about the case in which Bishop Vicentios, who worked with Paisios at the monastery, charged that the former abbot was involved in sexual misconduct. A former nun at the monastery also went to the police and FBI to make similar charges, but so far no criminal charges have been filed, although the law firm's letter sets up the possibility of civil claims that could seek significant damages against the church. The monastery is under the jurisdiction of the Patriarchate. The law firm's letter added that, as you must be aware, the acts inflicted upon Andrew resulted in substantial damage, and it said that Andrew must be provided a remedy for what he endured, without stipulating what was being sought, although similar cases have cost the church considerable monies. Zalkin told the Patriarch and his synod that his office specializes in sex abuse cases. Our office has substantial experience representing survivors of childhood sexual abuse, including people abused by clergymen. In this case, our preliminary investigation has revealed allegations that Metropolitan Paisios routinely crossed the physical boundaries of others and inflicted great harm upon faithful of all ages and genders. It is also alleged that other clergymen and servants of the church were either aware of the abusive conduct or aware of facts that would have put any reasonable person on notice that the abuse was inflicted. The letter also stated to Patriarch Bartholomew that, while fear and embarrassment may have previously silenced the victims of Metropolitan Paisios, that moment has passed. In our experience, the sooner you respond compassionately to the survivors of the wrongfulness brought by Metropolitan Paisios, the sooner the healing process for the victims and the church can begin. Avoidance and delay serves only to squander your own moral authority. In a further criticism, the letter alleged that while directives have been given for the reorganization of the monastery by the Patriarchate, nothing has been done about Paisios' victims. Press reports indicate that Ecumenical Patriarch ordered Metropolitan Paisios to leave the United States. It has also been reported that the Patriarchate is planning to reorganize the monastery in Astoria and its dependencies in the U.S. administratively, financially, and legally. Yet, nothing has been done to respond to the human suffering. It is fair to infer from these reports that the Church to date has been more worried about the possibility of scandal than responding to survivors and their families. Zalkin invited the Patriarchate to communicate with his office. He stated in his letter to Patriarch Bartholomew that, "At this time, we invite you to enter into a dialogue with us that will lead to a compassionate response to Andrew and others harmed by Metropolitan Paisios. The issue of Paisios and Vicentios was discussed again at the Synod's meeting on January 12th. The Synod reaffirmed the suspension that was placed on both hierarchs, Paisios and Vicentios, and referred the matter to the Canonical Committee of the Patriarchate for study and recommendation to the Synod, which is scheduled for Feb. 10. After the charges came to light, Paisios went to Athens, but after the Exarchy team's report on its investigation during a visit to New York was given to the Patriarchate decided not to punish him initially, declaring he deserved ecclesiastical leniency before growing charges about alleged sexual misconduct and other wrongdoings at the monastery led to his being suspended. Boston, Massachusetts. Metropolitan Paisios of Tiana and Bishop Vicentios of Apamea, the former abbot and deputy abbot, respectively, of the St. Irene Chrysovalantul Monastery in Astoria, will be sent into retirement to monasteries in Kalymnos and Patmos by the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The decision was reached during recent Patriarchate's Holy Synod meetings, over which His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew presided. TNAC has learned that the penance of liturgical suspension, which was placed on both hierarchs in December 2010, will remain in effect. Essentially, they will not be allowed to perform liturgies or to celebrate any other services or sacraments. The issue first came to light last October when Paisios submitted a letter of resignation as the monastery's abbot, citing health reasons. TNH revealed shortly thereafter that a man who lived in the monastery for 13 years had contacted federal and local authorities about clandestine activities, alleging rampant orgies involving young male and female parishioners, including some who had joined the Paisios order from the time they were underage. The same person also notified the Patriarchate about the allegations, both verbally and in writing. Young nun Chrysonymphe Fitzpatrick took off the monastic vows and cassock and returned to the ranks of the laity and turned over $280,000 in cash and some golden lire to Astoria police. The following month, the Patriarchate sent a 3-person exarchy headed by Metropolitan Nikitas of Dardanelia to investigate. The exarchy conducted a long inquiry at which both the man and the nun who initiated the allegations were among the dozens of persons who volunteered to offer live testimony while being taped. The exarchy then presented all of the evidence to Bartholomew. Prior to the Synod meeting, the Committee of the Patriarchal Institutions met and reviewed the case, which implicated both Paisios and Vicentios. Metropolitan Athanasios of Chalcedon chaired the committee, and its members are Metropolitan Iakovos of the Pringiponyssos, Metropolitan Demetrios of Sevastia, and Metropolitan Melityn of Philadelphia. The committee recommended to the Synod that both hierarchs should face mandatory retirement for life. The Synod implemented the committee's recommendation. Vicentios, who continues to reside at St. Nectarios Church in Brooklyn, did not respond to TNH's request for comment. Paisios has resided in Athens since last October.